Today we are talking about the history of the color green, and once again, before you swipe away, pull the phone because I promise it's way more interesting than you think. It always is. Since the beginning of history, green has been a color that's connected us to the planet. For the Egyptians, green was the color of regeneration. For the Romans, the color of fertility, the color of the goddess Venus, and in Islam, it is the color of paradise. And yet, despite how loved the color green is, historically it's been really hard to make pigment out of it, and that's because you can't really make pigments out of plants, at least not ones that are very durable or saturated. And so a lot of pigments have to be made from minerals or chemical processes. And so ironically, it's in this search for a green pigment that represents the beauty of the earth that a toxic and poisonous history begins. In 1775, a pigment called Scheele's green is discovered, and a few years later it's followed up by a pigment called emerald green. It was truly the first game-changing green pigment, a pigment that was jewel-toned, beautiful, long-lasting, and everybody loves it. Like, it's all the rage. Suddenly, this green, emerald green, is everywhere. It's in fashion, it's in wallpapers. Painters like Monet, Cezanne, Van Gogh, they all use it. But the ingredient that's making this green so bright and so jewel-toned is arsenic. Arsenic is one of the most poisonous chemicals. It can cause ulcers, it can cause kidney and liver failure. And the Victorians knew all about this. It was obvious that people were getting sick. The women were getting sick from the clothes, the wallpaper was making people sick, but they truly did not care because they just loved the green so much, and it was the first time they had a green like this, and so people just learned to live with the toxicity. It sounds crazy, but it's true. Eventually, of course, science progresses and new, safer pigments come to the market, but this association of green with poison becomes very culturally cemented. But it's about to get worse, because in the early 20th century, we had the discovery of radium in radioluminescent paint. And as we all know, radioluminescent paint gives off a very green glow. Now, of course, we know now that radiation in radium and radioluminescent paint is highly toxic. It's one of the most toxic substances on the planet, if not the most toxic substance. But in the early 1900s, they really didn't know this. They just thought it was a really cool paint. So it starts being used everywhere, and the effects are tragic. Between Scheele's green, emerald green, and now radiation green, green and poison just become synonymous, and society begins to understand green in this way. And it's for these reasons that in the 1900s, comic book characters start being painted in green to represent evil and poison. The first that comes to mind is obviously the Joker, everyone's favorite, who falls into a vat of chemicals and it makes his hair turn green. But we also have the Riddler, Scorpion, the Evil Queen, the Green Goblin, Electro, the list goes on and on. One of my favorite uses of green as a color of evil and toxicity is, of course, in The Wizard of Oz and the contemporary Wicked, where the Wicked Witch of the West has green skin because her mother ate a poisonous green apple that removed all goodness from their hearts. This association of